They gave me the broadcast station because I was the lowest-ranking officer on the bridge, who could read at speed without stumbling. That was the whole qualification. Lieutenant Commander Sareth had reviewed my diction scores from the academy. 94th percentile, clean consonants, no regional bleed. And she had handed me the list and told me what I would be doing for the next 11 hours. I sat down. I pulled the registry open on the secondary screen. 41,214 entries, 2 columns beside each name. The first column held the designation the Vrethkai Dominion had assigned, alphanumeric, prefixed by the series code, running sequentially from Unit 1 to Unit 41,214. The second column held what the Vrethkai had replaced, the name, what that person had been called before a processing vessel intercepted their transit corridor and their paperwork ceased to exist. The Vrethkai had kept the names. That was the part that took me a long time to understand. They hadn't discarded them. They had filed them, carefully, cross-referenced, archived in the same administrative ledger that tracked unit performance ratings and caloric allocations. You need the original designation to run a replacement unit analysis. You need the birth name to confirm biological source data. They had not thrown away who these people were. They had simply decided it was no longer relevant. 22 years. 14 frontier transit corridors. It predated the Traverse Accord. It predated the first human permanent settlement in the Heron Reach by 6 years. The Vrethkai had identified the corridors as a viable source pool and had begun processing transits within the first cycle of human expansion into that region. They were patient, the Vrethkai. 400 years of territorial consolidation had made them good at waiting for resources to move into range. We had not known. That was the weight I carried to my station that morning. The weight that sat at the base of my sternum and did not move. 22 years, 41,000 people. And we had filed the missing transit reports, and the corridor hazard assessments, and the search and recovery closures, marked inconclusive, and we had not known what we were filing. The Vrethkai had been meticulous about leaving nothing to find. No wreckage, no distress signals. The processing vessels came in fast and left clean. What we found was the archive. An intelligence team on a border survey pulled a corrupted Vrethkai administrative node out of a debris field 14 months ago. The corruption was partial. Enough survived to read. What they read was VDP-4, in full, with the complete registry attached. All 41,214 entries, designations and birth names both, performance ratings and death notations and disposal logs. 860 warships were a long time in preparation. 14 months of targeting work, 19 Vrethkai installations in the Heron Reach and the Sol Corridor Belt, mapped and sequenced in the order we intended to remove them. The Arden Compact had been assembled quietly, in 3 separate staging grounds, with no galactic frequency traffic that would have given the Vrethkai time to do anything about it. When we arrived at the first installation, the Vrethkai broadcast a standard territorial alert. We did not reply in the way they expected. I keyed the channel. The frequency was open across all Vrethkai-monitored bands. Everything they had active in the Heron Reach would receive it simultaneously, and everything that picked it up would carry it further. That was the point. The Vrethkai had filed 41,000 names in a closed administrative ledger. We were going to read them out in the open, one by one, so that every receiver in range would have them. I began. Unit VK1, a breath. Marin Atta, Colony Surveyor, age 31 at time of transit, Callaway Reach, 2267. The first Vrethkai installation was a processing relay, not a military target exactly, but processing relays were how the designation protocol ran, and the Arden Compact had not made distinctions. INS Heron's Reach and INS Pale Covenant took it apart in 6 minutes. I kept reading. Unit VK2, Tomas Orel, Cargo Handler, age 24 at time of transit, Seoul Corridor Way Station, 2267. Unit VK3, Sella Marchetti, Medic, Frontier Garrison, age 29 at time of transit, Seoul Corridor Transit Hub, 2268. The names came steadily. That was the operation. The second installation fell at hour 2. I was deep into the VK900s by then. The names had begun to blur at the edges if I let them, so I didn't let them. Each one I read as if I were reading it for the first time. Cargo Handler, Botanist, Hull Technician, Schoolteacher, Transit Authority Clerk. Hour 4. The fourth and fifth installations came down in sequence, a logistics depot and an administrative garrison. I did not stop reading while they fell. I did not stop reading when Sarath told me the Vrethkai had begun broadcasting surrender requests on the primary military frequency. We had anticipated that. The Arden Compact had a single frequency reserved for Vrethkai communications, and it was not the one I was on. The surrender requests were noted, and the operation continued. Unit VK2801, Asha Voss. Atmospheric engineer. Age 36 at time of transit. Heron Reach Colony Hub, 2278. Unit VK2802. Kale Mirren, dock technician. Age 22 at time of transit. Heron Reach Transit Corridor 3, 2278. The names were the work, and the names were what I was there to do. And I understood by hour 5 that the reading was not symbolic. It was not a gesture. The Vrethkai had built a system that processed 41,000 people on the assumption that no record of who they had been would ever be made public. The system's logic depended on the names staying in the closed ledger. We were breaking the logic. Every name I read out on open frequency was a brick pulled from the architecture the designation protocol was built on. The Vrethkai had been patient. We had been thorough. Unit VK 3990. Idris Solon. Mining surveyor. Age 38 at time of transit. Sol Corridor Waystation 7, 2281. Hour 8. The 12th installation came apart. I was into the late VK 7000s, and the names were still coming. I had stopped thinking about them individually around hour 6, which I had not wanted to do, and then I had found a way back in. I read the occupation before the name, internally, a half-second before I spoke it. It kept them separate. It kept each one from folding into the one before it. School teacher, engineer, child, age 7, doctor. I did not let my voice change on the child entries. There were 612 of them. I had known that before I sat down. Sarath had told me so I would not encounter it unprepared. My brother had gone into the Sol Corridor transit system in 2279. He was a hull maintenance tech. He was 26. The missing transit report had been filed and marked inconclusive 8 months later, when the investigation closed. I knew what the VK7 series covered: the year range, the corridor designations. I had looked before I sat down. I did not search for him by name while I was reading. That was a rule I had made for myself. Hour 11. The 19th installation. A command garrison, the largest of the 19, the one the Vrethkai had used as the administrative center for VDP-4, came apart in 40 minutes. I was in the VK 4000s. I could see the end of the registry. Unit VK 40906. Senakova. Freight pilot. Age 31 at time of transit. Heron Reach Transit Corridor 1, 2288. Colony Administrator, age 52 at time of transit, Callaway Reach Hub, 2288. The filing was by transit corridor and year, and he was deep in the Sol corridor block, coded to a 2279 intake event, designated VK 387441. The death notation was from 2281, 2 years of service in a Vrethkai border deployment, classified as unit expended, operational attrition. I read the designation, I read the occupation, I read the name. The channel carried it out across the Heron Reach and the Sol corridor belt, and everything in range, and whatever picked it up would carry it further. I finished the registry 14 minutes later. The last entry was a dock laborer from Callaway Reach, 20 years old, taken in the final transit corridor sweep, before the Arden Compact's arrival had closed the corridors permanently. I read his designation. I read his name. Then I sat with the channel open. Sereth did not tell me to close it. The bridge was quiet. Somewhere behind me, the formation was holding position over the wreckage of the 19th installation, and the Vrethkai were broadcasting on their reserved frequency, and none of that was on my channel. My channel had 41,214 names on it now. I did not close it. The Vrethkai had kept the names because the names were data. We had read them back because the names were people. The distinction had taken 22 years and 860 warships to establish. I left it established.